The Galactic Council chamber hung in the darkness of space like a jewel. It orbited a neutral star, far from any single species' territory. Inside the Great Dome, 12 representatives sat in a wide circle. Each one spoke for an ancient race that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Ambassador Minjun Kim sat in the human chair. It was smaller than the others. The council had given humanity this seat 47 years ago. At the time, the elder species had called it a gift, a chance for the young race to learn from their betters. Minjun had gray hair now. He had been young when he first came here, full of hope, full of pride for his species. That hope had died slowly over the years. Today's session was like all the others. The council was voting on resource allocation. Several colonies needed help. Food, medicine, building materials. The human colonies had submitted requests, along with everyone else. High Arbiter Venlos read the list. His voice was dry and formal. He approved aid for the Kelthani colonies, for the Vryn outposts, for the Sakthari settlements. When he reached the human requests, he paused. "The human colonies are denied," he said simply. Minjun stood. He kept his voice calm. "May I ask why?" "Our colonies meet all the criteria. They've contributed significantly to the Common Defense Fund." Councillor Thexnar, the Sakthari representative, made a sound that might have been a laugh. His scales glittered under the chamber lights. "Contributed? Your species has been here less than 50 years. You cannot claim equal standing with races who built this council 3,000 years ago." "I'm not claiming superiority," Minjun said. So very tired. "I'm asking for fairness. Our colonists need help. We've followed every rule, paid every fee, sent our people to serve. In every council project, you've requested. Your people serve because you seek to prove yourselves," Venlo said. His tone suggested the matter was already closed. "That is the nature of youth. But resources are limited. They must go to established members first." Minjun looked around the circle. Not one of the 12 elder species met his eyes. They had heard this conversation before. They were bored by it. "We've been patrolling the frontier zones for free," Minjun said quietly. "Our ships protect trade routes in 40 sectors. We don't ask for payment." "Then stop doing it," Thexnar said. He waved one clawed hand dismissively. "No one asked you to play guardian. If you choose to waste your resources on charity, that is your concern." "Charity?" Minjun felt something break inside him. Not anger. Worse than anger. Understanding. "We call it helping." "The vote is complete," Venlos announced. "The human request is denied. Now, let us move to the trade agreements." Minjun gathered his data pad. He collected his papers. He stood slowly, carefully, like a man, much older than his years. "Ambassador Kim," Venlo said, sounding annoyed. "We are not finished." "Yes," Minjun said softly. "You are." He walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. "This is inappropriate," Thexnar called after him. "You cannot simply leave. A council session." Minjun stopped at the doorway. He turned back. For a moment, he looked at each of the 12 representatives. They had taught him something important today. Not through their words, but through their contempt. "Thank you for making everything clear," he said. "We understand now. Good luck, council members. We hope you find what you're looking for." Alaway won. Then he left. The door closed behind him with a soft sound. Final. In the chamber, the council members looked at each other. Then they shrugged and returned to their agenda. Humans were emotional creatures. Young. Naive. They would be back. On the human embassy station, Minjun sent a single message to Earth. It was not long. It did not need to be. "They have shown us who they are. We should believe them. Recommend immediate withdrawal." The response came within 6 hours. It was even shorter. "Approved. Come home." Min Jun began the process. He called all human ambassadors, all human representatives, all human liaisons across council space. The message was simple and clear. Pack your things, close the embassies, we're leaving. There were questions, of course. Some of the younger diplomats wanted explanations. Min Jun gave them the truth. When this lever, when Gaijin were of Naus, they don't want us here. Not really. We've been trying to earn respect that will never come. It's time to go. Within 48 hours, every human embassy in council space was empty. The buildings were left clean and locked. No mess. No damage. No angry messages scrawled on walls. The humans simply left. Human patrol ships abandoned their stations in the frontier zones. They filed proper notices. They followed all protocols. Then they jumped to hyperspace and went home. Human medical staff at various council facilities submitted their resignations. They finished their current shifts. They trained replacements when possible. Then they packed and departed. Human teachers at the intercultural schools said goodbye to their students. Some of the children cried. The teachers cried too. But they still left. Within 1 week, the human presence in council space had vanished like morning fog. The council noticed, of course. Junior administrators sent reports to their superiors. Those reports eventually reached the council members themselves. The humans have withdrawn all their personnel. An aide told Counselor Thexnar. All of them? Thexnar asked, sounding surprised. Every single one. Their embassies are closed. Their patrol ships are gone. Even their civilian contractors have left. Thexnar laughed. They're throwing a tantrum. Like children denied sweets. They'll be back within a month. Begging for their seat at the table. The aide hesitated. Should we reach out to them? Absolutely not, Thexnar said firmly. That would reward bad behavior. Let them sit in their corner of space and think about what they've done. They need us more than we need them. High Arbiter Venlos had a similar conversation with his staff. His response was almost identical. The humans were young, impulsive, emotional. This was a lesson they needed to learn. The council moved forward with its business. Trade agreements were signed. Disputes were mediated. Resources were allocated to the elder species who truly deserved them. No one worried about the humans. They should have. In human space, Min Jun Kim sat in his apartment on Earth. He looked out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, the council was learning to live without humanity. He wondered how long it would take them to notice everything humans had been doing. All the small things, the quiet things. The things no one paid attention to because they simply expected them to happen. Min Jun poured himself a drink. He raised the glass toward the stars. Good luck, he whispered. You're going to need it. 3 months had passed since the humans left. The Galactic Council continued its work as if nothing had changed. Trade Minister Giral reviewed the quarterly reports in his office. The numbers looked wrong. This can't be correct, he muttered, checking the data again. Security costs had increased by 60%. Supply chain disruptions were up. Insurance rates for merchant vessels had doubled. He called his assistant. What happened to our frontier security? The assistant pulled up the records. It appears the human patrol ships were covering sectors 15 through 54. When they withdrew, those areas became unprotected. Giral felt cold. 54 sectors? We never authorized that. They were doing it voluntarily, sir. No council funding was involved. Then why didn't we know about it? The assistant looked uncomfortable. We did know, sir. It's in the reports. But since the humans weren't asking for payment, no one flagged it as important. Giral stared at his screen. 40 sectors. Human ships had been protecting 40 sectors of space. For free. And now, those sectors were empty. The first attack came 2 days later. Pirates hit a merchant convoy near Frontier Station Omega 7. 3 ships were destroyed. 72 people died. The station commander sent an emergency message. "Where are the patrol ships? We've been waiting for 30 minutes. The attackers are getting away." Ah, the response from Council Military Command was brief. "No patrol ships are assigned to your sector. File a formal complaint." By the time Council forces arrived 3 hours later, the pirates were long gone. They had taken cargo worth millions of credits. More attacks followed. Pirates had always existed, but human patrols had kept them under control. Now, the patrols were gone, and the pirates were learning fast. Trade routes that had been safe for decades became danger zones. Admiral Corthan stood in the Council military headquarters, staring at a map of the galaxy. Red markers showed recent attacks. There were dozens of them, all in sectors that used to be protected by humans. "We need to redeploy our fleets," he told the Council. "Cover these gaps." "That will cost billions," Giral objected. "Our budget cannot handle it." "Then people will keep dying," Corthan said flatly. "The humans were covering 40% of our frontier space. We can't just ignore that." Councillor Thexnar stood up. His scales were darker than usual, a sign of anger. "This is exactly what the humans wanted. They're making us look weak. We should not reward their tantrum by admitting we need them." "This isn't about pride," Corthan said. He was a military man. He dealt in facts, not politics. "Our security infrastructure had a massive hole in it. We didn't notice because the humans filled it. Now, we're paying the price." Other problems began appearing. Small things at first, easy to miss. The quarantine station at Delta 9 sent a distress call. "We've had an outbreak. Category 3. Pathogen. Our medical staff has been infected. We need the emergency response team." The response team didn't come. There was no response team. The humans had been the response team. They had staffed the quarantine stations because no one else wanted to. The work was dangerous, and the pay was terrible. 12 people died at Delta 9 before Council medics arrived from halfway across the sector. The Council medics took one look at the situation and demanded triple pay. The Council had no choice but to agree. Mining operations began shutting down. Ancient equipment that had run for centuries suddenly stopped working. The human engineers who maintained it were gone. No one else understood the old systems. "Why didn't we train our own people?" a Council supervisor demanded. "The humans never charged us for the work," his assistant explained. It seemed wasteful to duplicate their efforts. The refugee processing center on Haven 3 collapsed under the weight of new arrivals. Thousands of displaced people crowded into camps designed for hundreds. Disease spread. Children went hungry. "Where is the aid network?" the camp director screamed into her communicator. "We're dying here." The aid network was gone. Humans had run 60% of it. They had organized food distribution, medical care, and housing placement. They had done it with volunteers who paid their own way to help strangers. Now those volunteers were home. The refugees suffered. Councillor Thexnar tried to ignore the reports piling up on his desk. He told himself these were temporary problems. The Council would adapt. They always had. Then came the distress call from Soktheri Prime. It was a mining colony on the edge of Soktheri space. Home to 3,000 civilians. Mostly families. The call came through in the middle of the night. Under attack, unknown vessels, multiple casualties, request immediate assistance. The nearest Council military base was 4 hours away. They scrambled ships immediately. But 4 hours is a long time in combat. There used to be a human search and rescue station just 1 hour from Soktheri Prime. The SAR teams had been fast, efficient. They had saved thousands of lives over the years. But the SAR station was empty now. The humans had taken their ships and gone home. The Council forces arrived to find the colony in ruins. The attackers had fled. 3,000 Soktheri civilians had been waiting for help that never came. 2,843 of them were dead. Thexnar attended the memorial service. He stood among the survivors and listened to them cry. A small child approached him. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. "Where were the humans?" she asked. "My teacher said, 'The humans always come when people need help.'" Thexnar had no answer. He looked at the child's face, at the trust that was breaking in her eyes. He felt something he had never felt before in the council chambers: shame. The council met in emergency session. The mood was different now. Quieter. Heavier. "We need to review the human contributions," High Arbiter Venlos said. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. "Get me a complete accounting. Everything they were doing. Every service they provided." It took a team of analysts 2 weeks to compile the report. When it was finished, they presented it to the council in silence. No one wanted to be the one to say the numbers out loud. Humans had been paying 30% of the council's operational costs. They had never mentioned it. Never asked for credit. They had simply paid. Because the work needed doing. Humans had been staffing hospitals, schools, and aid stations across the galaxy. Volunteers. Most of them. People who believed helping others was its own reward. Humans had been mediating disputes between minor species. Teaching. Healing. Protecting. Building. All of it quietly. All of it without fanfare. The galaxy had grown dependent on human generosity without ever noticing it was there. "How did we miss this?" Giral asked. His voice was hollow. "They never asked for anything," Venlos said quietly. "So we assumed they were giving nothing of value." Counselor Thexnar sat in his chair and said nothing. He kept seeing that little girl's face, kept hearing her question, "Where were the humans?" The answer was simple and terrible. The humans were gone, and they had taken their compassion with them. The galaxy was learning to live without that compassion. It was a cold lesson. A painful one. And it was only beginning. 6 months had passed. The Galactic Aid Network was dying. Dr. Sareth stood in the hospital on Yevron Prime and watched another patient fade away. The disease was treatable. Simple, even. But they didn't have the medicine. They didn't have the staff. They didn't have the equipment. They used to have all of those things. The humans had brought them. "How many today?" Dr. Sareth asked her nurse. 15 dead, 32 new cases. We're out of beds." Dr. Sareth closed her eyes. She was a good doctor. She had trained for years. But she couldn't save people with empty hands. The Galactic Aid Network had been the largest humanitarian organization in the galaxy. It had provided food, medicine, disaster relief, and education to hundreds of worlds. The humans had been its backbone, not its leaders. The humans had rarely sought leadership positions. They had been the workers, the volunteers, the people who showed up when disaster struck and stayed until the job was done. 70% of the aid network's field personnel had been human. They had worked in war zones and plague ships and collapsed buildings. They had asked for nothing except the chance to help. Now they were gone. The aid network had tried to continue without them. It had lasted 3 months before collapsing completely. 3 worlds were facing famine. The aid network used to coordinate food distribution. Without it, supply ships sat in orbit while people starved, because no one knew where the food was needed most. The humans had known. They had built databases, created distribution networks, trained local staff. All of that infrastructure was useless without the people who understood how to use it. On Kelthany 7, a school closed. It was a small school in a poor district. The students were mostly orphans. The human teacher, Sarah Chen, had worked there for 8 years. She had used her own money to buy supplies. She had stayed late every day to help students who struggled. Now the building was empty. The Kelthany government had sent a replacement teacher. He had lasted 1 week before quitting. The pay was too low. The students were too difficult. The work was too hard. Sarah Chen had never complained. She had simply taught. One of her former students, a young Kelthani boy named Resh, stood outside the locked school. He was 12 years old. Sarah had taught him to read. Before her, he had been just another street kid with no future. Why did she leave? Resh asked his friend. All the humans left, his friend said. My mother says they got angry at the council. But we didn't do anything to them, Resh said. He felt confused and angry. Why did they leave us? No one had an answer. The children didn't understand. How could they? They only knew that the humans who had helped them were gone. On Vryn Colony, an elderly man named Court sat in his home and looked at an old photograph. It showed a human named Park Ji-woo standing with Court's family. They were smiling. It had been taken 3 years ago, just after the flood. The flood had destroyed half the colony. Court's family had been trapped in their home as the water rose. They had sent a distress call, but the colony's rescue services were overwhelmed. Ji-woo had come anyway. He had piloted his small rescue boat through dangerous currents to reach them. He had saved Court, his wife, and his 3 grandchildren. Why did you do this? Court had asked him later. You don't know us. We're not even the same species. Ji-woo had looked confused by the question. You needed help, he had said simply. That's enough. Now Ji-woo was gone. Court heard that another flood had hit a colony in the next sector. 20 people had drowned while waiting for rescue. There were no human rescue pilots anymore. Court touched the photograph gently. Thank you, he whispered to the image. We never said it enough. Thank you. In the council chambers, High Arbiter Venlos read report after report. Each one was worse than the last. The galaxy was not collapsing, but it was definitely breaking. A junior analyst named Mira had compiled a comprehensive study. She had worked on it for weeks, cross-referencing thousands of records. Now, she stood before the council and presented her findings. The humans were doing far more than anyone realized, she said. Her voice shook slightly. She was young and nervous. I've documented over 10,000 separate initiatives. Most of them were completely voluntary. She displayed her data on the chamber's main screen. The numbers were staggering. Humans had been running medical clinics on 47 worlds, training local doctors, providing free care to those who couldn't pay. Humans had been maintaining infrastructure on 32 stations and outposts, old equipment that everyone else had forgotten about. Humans had been teaching at 112 schools, most of them in poor areas that couldn't attract other teachers. Humans had been providing disaster relief, search and rescue, refugee support, orphan care, and a dozen other services. Why? Trade Minister Giral asked. What did they get in return? Mira looked at him. Nothing. That's the point. They didn't ask for anything. That makes no sense, Counselor Thexnar said. But his voice was quiet. No species acts without self-interest. The humans did, Mira said. She pulled up more data. I interviewed dozens of species who worked with them. Everyone said the same thing. The humans helped because they believed it was right. Not for profit. Not for status. Just because someone needed help. The council sat in silence. The concept was alien to them. They had built their civilization on trade, on mutual benefit, on careful calculation of costs and gains. The humans had built their contribution on something else entirely. Something the elder species had forgotten existed. Compassion without expectation of return. Show me the financial impact, Venlos said quietly. Mira pulled up another chart. The humans were subsidizing 30% of council operations. They were providing services worth trillions of credits annually. All of it unasked for. All of it unreported because no one thought to ask. She paused. We didn't lose a member species. We lost our support system. We lost the people who held everything together while we focused on politics. Counselor Thexnar stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Sakthiri colony held memorial services every week. For the people who had died waiting for help that never came. His people. Dead, because he had been too proud to appreciate the humans who would have saved them. We have to bring them back, Giral said. Whatever it takes. Will they come? Mira asked. I've studied their psychology. Humans value respect above almost everything else. We showed them contempt. They won't forget that easily. Venlo stood. He felt very old. Then we will go to them. We will ask properly this time. We will apologize. Apologize? Thexnar turned from the window. The council does not apologize. Then the council will learn. Venlo said firmly. I will go myself if necessary. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. It's time to admit it. The vote was called. It passed unanimously. The council would send a formal delegation to human space. They would request humanity's return. They would offer trade agreements, political concessions, whatever was necessary. But first, they had to find humanity. The humans had left no forwarding address. They had simply vanished into their own space and closed their borders. It took the council 3 weeks to locate Earth. The humans had changed their communication protocols. They were no longer accepting standard council transmissions. When the council finally sent a message, the response was brief and cold. Message received. Not interested. Please do not contact us again. The delegation prepared anyway. They would go in person. They would make the humans understand how much the galaxy needed them. But Mira, reading the reports in her small office, wondered if the council understood what they were really asking. The humans hadn't left because they wanted something. They had left because the council had shown them their help meant nothing. How do you convince someone to return to a place where they were never valued? She didn't know the answer. She hoped the delegation did. Outside her window, a memorial service was taking place. Another one. This time for victims of a mining accident. The human rescue teams would have saved them, but the humans were gone. And people kept dying because of it. 9 months had passed since humanity left. The council delegation ship approached the borders of human space. High Arbiter Venlos stood on the bridge and watched the sensors. Human border stations tracked them, but said nothing. No threats. No warnings. Just silence. They know we're here, the pilot said. Then why don't they respond? Trade Minister Giral asked. Because they're waiting to see what we want, Councillor Thexnar said quietly. He had changed over the past months. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something that looked like shame. A message finally came through. It was audio only. The voice was professional and cold. Council vessel, you are approaching human territory. State your purpose. Venlos activated the communication system. This is High Arbiter Venlos of the Galactic Council. We request an audience with human leadership. We come in peace. There was a long pause. Then the voice returned. They waited for 6 hours. The delegation grew restless. In the old days, species begged for council attention. Now the council was the one waiting. Finally, a new message arrived. You may dock at Station Unity. You will be granted 1 meeting. Nothing more. Station Unity was a human-built station on the border. It was neutral ground. The delegation docked and was escorted to a conference room. The room was simple, clean, no decorations, no signs of wealth or power. Ambassador Min Jun Kim entered. He looked older than Venlos remembered. Tired. His hair was completely gray now. He sat down across from the delegation and folded his hands. You wanted to talk, Min Jun said. Talk. Venlos had prepared a speech. He had rehearsed it for days. Now, looking at Min Jun's tired eyes, the words felt hollow. We made a mistake, Venlos said simply. The galaxy is suffering without you. We want you to come back. Min Jun said nothing. He simply waited. Giral leaned forward. We're prepared to offer significant incentives. Full voting rights on the council. Trade agreements favorable to humanity. Access to all council resources. Technology sharing, another delegate added. Cultural exchange programs. Guaranteed seats. On all major committees. Min Jun listened to it all. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. Thexnar looked shocked. You haven't even heard all our offers. I don't need to. Min Jun said. His voice was calm. Patient, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. You're offering us things. Trying to buy our return. You still don't understand. Then explain it to us. Venlo said. He meant it. He genuinely wanted to understand. Min Jun stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at space. We didn't do those things because we wanted rewards. We helped because people needed help. We taught because children needed teachers. We healed because patients needed doctors. He turned back to face them. We didn't leave because you weren't giving us enough. We left because you showed us we weren't wanted. You made it clear that our help was worthless, that we were naive children playing at being important. We were wrong, Venlo said. The words came hard. The council never admitted mistakes. We see that now. The galaxy needs you. The galaxy needed us then too, Min Jun said quietly. You just didn't notice. On Earth, Lee Seo-yeon sat in her small apartment and watched the news. She was a pilot. She had flown search and rescue missions for 12 years. She had saved hundreds of lives. Now she worked at a civilian transport company. It was safe, boring. She flew cargo from one Earth station to another and came home every night. But she couldn't stop watching the news from Council Space. Every report of a disaster. Every story of people dying while waiting for help that never came. Each one felt like a weight on her chest. You couldn't save everyone, her husband told her. You did your best. My best was there, Seo-yeon said, pointing at the screen. My best was flying into disasters and pulling people out. My best was making a difference. They didn't want you there. The people did, Seo-yeon said. She thought about all the faces, all the people who had cried with relief when her ship arrived. The politicians didn't want us. The people always did. Choi Dae-jung felt the same way. He had been a medic at a quarantine station. He had treated some of the most dangerous diseases in the galaxy. He had lost count of how many lives he had saved. Now he worked at a hospital on Earth. It was good work. Important work. But it wasn't the same. I keep thinking about Delta 9, he told his colleague. 12 people died there from a pathogen I could have treated in my sleep. But I was here. Safe. Following orders to stay away. Safe. You can't blame yourself. I don't, Dae-jung said. I blame the system that made us choose between our dignity and our purpose. Back on Station Unity, the meeting continued. What can we do to change your mind? Jiral asked. He sounded desperate. The suffering is real. People are dying. I know, Min Jun said. His voice cracked slightly. Do you think we don't see the reports? Do you think we don't care? He sat back down. For the first time, the delegation saw real pain in his eyes. Every disaster, every death, every crisis, Min Jun said. We see them all, and it kills us to stay away. But we can't go back to being taken for granted. We can't go back to watching you dismiss everything we do, while expecting us to keep doing it. We won't do that again, Venlos promised. How do I know? Min Jun asked. When things get better, when the crisis passes, what stops you from going back to the way things were? What stops you from treating us like naive children again? Thexnar spoke up. His voice was heavy with regret. I was on Sakthari Prime when you found us. After the attack, I saw the bodies. I spoke to the survivors. He paused. A child asked me where the humans were. She was 6 years old. She had been told the humans always come to help. And I had to tell her that we had driven you away. Minjun looked at him. Thexnar met his gaze. I can't take back what I said. Thexnar continued. I can't undo my arrogance. But I can tell you that I understand now. We didn't just lose help. We lost hope. We lost the belief that someone would come just because it was right. My people are dying because of choices I made, Thexnar said. His voice was breaking. And I deserve that burden. But they don't. The children don't. The sick don't. The refugees don't. Minjun closed his eyes. Don't do this. I'm not asking you to forgive the council, Thexnar said. I'm asking you to remember why you helped in the first place. It wasn't for us. It was for them. For the people who need you. The room was silent. Minjun sat with his head bowed. The weight of the decision crushed down on him. Finally, he spoke. We'll help when you call. Emergency situations. Disasters. Real need. We'll come. We'll do what must be done. Then, we'll leave. You won't stay? Venlos asked. No, Minjun said firmly. We won't return to council space. We won't rebuild what we had. But we won't abandon people who need us either. Send an emergency request. We'll answer. Every time. Giral started to speak, but Venlos held up a hand. That is more than we deserve, Venlos said. Thank you. Minjun stood. The request must come through proper channels. It must be real. Don't call us for politics or convenience. Only call when lives are at stake. We understand, Venlos said. The delegation left. As they walked back to their ship, Giral asked quietly, Is this enough? It has to be, Venlos said. They're offering mercy we don't deserve. We should accept it with grace. On Station Unity, Minjun sat alone in the conference room. He had made a decision that would affect billions of humans. They would be the galaxy's emergency service. Its last resort, its reluctant saviors. It wasn't what they had been. But it was better than turning their backs completely. He thought about Seo Yun and Daejong and thousands of others like them. People who lived to help. Who needed purpose more than they needed safety. They would answer the call. He knew they would, because that's what humans did. But this time, they would do it on their terms, with respect, with dignity, or not at all. 15 months had passed since humanity left. The Galactic Council had called for human help 3 times. 3 times. Humans had come. They had saved lives, fixed problems, and left without ceremony. The Council called it the Humanity Protocol. Emergency only. No permanent presence, no politics. Just help when it was truly needed. It wasn't enough. The galaxy was darker now. Colder. Species that had once worked together now turned inward. The idealism that humans had brought was fading. Then the Skralex came. The Skralex were an old enemy. They had attacked Council space before, centuries ago. The elder species had driven them back through overwhelming force. Everyone thought the Skralex had learned their lesson. Everyone was wrong. The attack came without warning. A massive Skralex fleet jumped into Council space and began destroying everything in their path. Colonies burned. Defense stations fell. Trade routes collapsed. Admiral Corthan mobilized every ship he had. It wasn't enough. The Council military had been neglected for years. While humans had been maintaining peace through patrols and diplomacy, the Council had cut defense spending. Now, they paid the price. We're losing, Corthan reported to the Council. His face was grim. We can slow them down, but we can't stop them. How long do we have? Venlos asked. Weeks. Maybe days. If they concentrate their forces. The Council chamber fell silent. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Now, they faced annihilation. We need to evacuate, Trade Minister Giral said. Save who we can, and retreat. Retreat where? Councillor Thexnar asked. They'll hunt us across the galaxy. There's nowhere to hide. Venlos stood slowly. He looked older than ever. There is one option. Everyone knew what he meant. No one wanted to say it. "We can't," Giral said. "We used 2 of our emergency calls on smaller crises. We've called them 3 times already. They'll think we're abusing the protocol. People are dying," Venlos said quietly. "That's what the protocol is for. They'll say no." Another counselor said, "This isn't a rescue. This is a war. We're asking them to fight and die for us. After everything we did to them." Venlos walked to the communication console. His hand shook as he reached for it. "Then I'll make it clear that we're not ordering them. We're begging." He opened the channel to human space. His voice was heavy with exhaustion and fear. "This is High Arbiter Venlos of the Galactic Council. We are under massive attack. Our forces are overwhelmed. Our worlds are falling. We are facing annihilation." He paused. "I am not requesting assistance under the Humanity Protocol. I am begging for it. We have no right to ask. We know that. But billions of innocent people are going to die. Please, if you ever cared about the people of this galaxy, help us now." The message was sent. The Council waited. 3 days passed. 3 days of desperate fighting. 3 days of watching worlds burn. Then, sensors detected ships jumping into Council space. Hundreds of them? Thousands of them. They were human. But they weren't military ships. Not all of them. There were civilian transports, cargo haulers, private vessels, every kind of ship that could mount a weapon or carry supplies. Captain Han Yejin commanded the human fleet. She had been a military pilot, retired 5 years ago. When the call went out for volunteers, she had been one of the first to sign up. "This is Captain Han of the Human Volunteer Fleet," she broadcast on all channels. "Council forces, transmit your positions. We're here to help." Admiral Corthan felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked both sides. They used tactics the Skralex had never encountered. They took risks that seemed insane but somehow worked. More importantly, they worked with the Council forces instead of around them. Han coordinated with Corthan, combining human creativity with Council resources. It was the partnership that should have existed all along. Lee So-yun flew rescue missions again. She pulled wounded soldiers from damaged ships. She evacuated civilians from burning stations. She was in her element, doing what she was born to do. "Why did you come?" a Kelthani pilot asked her, as she dragged him from his wrecked fighter. "Someone needed help," Seo-yun said. The answer was simple. Choi Dae-jung set up field hospitals in war zones. He treated human and alien wounded without distinction. He worked until he collapsed, slept for 4 hours, and went back to work. "You should rest," a nurse told him. "People are dying." Dae-jung said, "I'll rest when they're safe." The tide of battle slowly turned. The Skralex had expected an easy victory. They found determined resistance instead. The humans didn't fight like the elder species. They didn't rely on superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They fought like people who had something to prove, like people who knew the cost of losing. The critical moment came at the Battle of Ven Station. The Skralex concentrated their fleet for a final push. If Ven Station fell, the way to the Council homeworlds would be open. Admiral Corthan put every ship he had into the defense. It still wasn't enough. The Skralex fleet outnumbered them 3-1. Then Captain Han made a decision that changed everything. "All human ships," she broadcast. "Maximum acceleration. Follow my lead." Her fleet charged straight at the Skralex formation. It looked like suicide. Maybe it was, but human ships were smaller, faster, more maneuverable than anything else in space. They dove into the Skralex formation like sharks into a school of fish. They disrupted formations, drew fire, created chaos. The Skralex fleet broke. Not because they were defeated, but because their rigid formations couldn't handle human unpredictability. Council forces pressed the advantage. The Skralex retreated, but the victory came with a price. Han's ship took heavy damage, protecting a Sakthari carrier. The same carrier that held Counselor Thexnar, who had been observing the battle. Han's ship was dying. Life support was failing. Her crew was evacuating. "This is Captain Han," she broadcast calmly. "We're abandoning ship. Someone, please pick us up." Thexnar watched from the carrier as rescue ships raced toward Han's vessel. She had saved his life, saved his people. The same people he had mocked when they begged for help. When Han was brought aboard the carrier, Thexnar was waiting. He bowed deeply. It was a gesture of ultimate respect in Sakthari culture. "Why?" he asked. His voice broke. "After everything we said, everything we did, why did you come?" Han looked at him. She was exhausted, hurt, but her eyes were clear. "Because you needed help," she said. "That's all that ever mattered to us. Not whether you liked us, not whether you respected us, just whether you needed us." She smiled tiredly. "We're not heroes. We're just people who can't walk away when others are suffering. It's a blessing and a curse." Thexnar felt tears on his face. He didn't know Sakthari could cry until that moment. The war ended 2 weeks later. The Skralex signed a treaty and withdrew. The galaxy was safe. The humans prepared to leave. High Arbiter Venlos called a special council session. For the first time in history, humans were invited to attend as honored guests. Captain Han stood before the council. She looked uncomfortable with the attention. "We want to honor you," Venlos said. "We want to build monuments, tell stories, make sure the galaxy never forgets what you did." "You don't need to honor us," Han said quietly. "We didn't come for glory." "We know," Venlos said. "That's exactly why we must honor you." The council voted. It was unanimous. On every council world, monuments would be built. Not to human military might. Not to their victory, to their compassion. The monuments were simple. They showed human figures helping others, healing, teaching, rescuing, protecting. The inscriptions were identical on every world, in memory of when we failed to see. Schools taught about the human era, about the species who gave everything and asked for nothing, about the lesson the galaxy learned too late. Young people from dozens of species made pilgrimages to human space. They came to learn, to understand, to see what kind of culture produced people like Han and Seoyeon and Daejung. The galaxy didn't become perfect, but it became kinder. Because they remembered the humans. The ones who showed them what service really meant. Minjun Kim sat in his retirement home on Earth. He was very old now. The war had been 10 years ago. He watched the news and saw a Kelthani rescue team save miners on a distant world. The team leader was interviewed. "Why do you do this dangerous work?" the reporter asked. "Because someone has to," the Kelthani said. "The humans taught us that. Before they left, they showed us that helping others is its own reward." Minjun smiled. It was a sad smile, but genuine. "Maybe our leaving taught them more than our staying ever could," he said softly. On Sakthari Prime, a memorial stood where the colony had been attacked all those years ago. A young Sakthari woman placed flowers at its base. She was the same child who had asked where the humans were. She was a doctor now. She worked in free clinics, treating people who couldn't pay. When people asked why, she told them about the humans who had helped her people, about the lessons she had learned. That real service expects no reward. That compassion is its own purpose. That sometimes the greatest strength is helping others even when they don't appreciate it. The inscription on the monument read, "They asked for nothing. They gave everything. We will not forget again." The galaxy remembered. Not perfectly. And in human space, volunteers still trained, still practiced, still prepared, because they knew the call would come again. Someone would need help. And when that happened, humans would answer. Not for glory, simply because someone needed help. And that would always be enough.